Monarda, or bee balm. It is a perennial that deserves a spot in nearly every cottage garden. It's tough, it's beautiful, the pollinators love it. Yeah, it's an all-around great plant to have. The scent is gorgeous. So let's talk about what you need to know about bee balm Monarda before you try to grow it so you can have the best success possible. So number one, there are more varieties than you think. Many gardeners simply call them bee balm or Monarda, but don't realize there's several species and hybrids out there that can make what for some people could be a difficult plant into one they can grow. So let me read off the names. Monarda didyma, scarlet rose bee balm. So these have the brilliant red flowers. This one is actually a hybrid. This is Jacob Klein. But then there's also Monarda fistulosa, that's wild bergamot, which has the lavender and green. You can grow it from seed. It's a North American native, and it's got a little bit better drought tolerance than many of the other hybrids. And there are the hybrids. Many of them are bred to resist better powdery mildew. Some are shorter, and then they create a wider range of colors. So flowers could be red, pink, a fuchsia pink, lavender, purple. I'll take you next to see my purple rooster one that is just beautiful. So most bee balms or Monarda grow best in zones 4 through 9, although some varieties will tolerate zones 3 and up to zone 10. Just make sure you give them adequate moisture in zone 10. This one, I admit, needs some support. I have a post back here, and I will come back after I'm done with this video and prop it back up. Yeah. If I was to put the camera on this for very long, you would see a lot of activity here. We will talk more about that later. Can you hear the hummingbirds? I think they're waiting for me to leave. Number 2, full sun produces the best blooms and can help to prevent it from flopping. So most like or prefer 6 hours of direct sun every single day. So in regions where you have a very, very hot summer, a little afternoon shade can help it to maintain its color and to look its best, but you don't want a lot of shade. But no, if they get too much shade, you'll get fewer flowers, flopping plants, and increased disease pressure. Number 3 on the list is give it room to breathe. The number one complaint about Monarda bee balm is the powdery mildew. Rarely, never. It doesn't kill the plant. It just makes the foliage look gray, and for many people, they don't like it. I tend to embrace gray foliage in the garden, and I haven't noticed a lot of powdery mildew. Sometimes towards the end, later in the summer, it will get it. But for the most part, I'm not troubled by it, but many of the newer cultivars do have a little bit more disease resistance. This is Purple Rooster. I absolutely love it. And yeah. So do the hummingbirds. I'm going to leave so he can have some peace here. We'll discuss more on this. So the best prevention for the powdery mildew is really quite simple. I'll read the list for you. Space plants about 18 to 24 inches apart, depending on the variety. Avoid overcrowding. Water the soil rather than the foliage whenever possible. Divide mature clumps every few years. And choose newer mildew-resistant cultivars if they're available. So the good air circulation can really, really help to prevent the powdery mildew. Now, I have a video on using a milk spray. I probably should go ahead and do another one and show exactly how I do it, mix it up, etc. But that milk spray, which is a ratio of like 1 to 10, meaning 1 cup of buttermilk, milk, whole milk is preferred, to 10 parts water. somewhere in there. I used a ratio that was greater, meaning like 1 part milk to 4 parts water. That left kind of a staining on the foliage, which I didn't like. And then I learned later that you can really reduce the ratio and have a beautiful effect, or have a great effect. And it really has, there's something in the milk that prohibits the growth of the fungal spores. And if you can get started, if you know you have a fungus problem in your garden, I would start before it ever begins. In fact, I should do that right now, or today. Mix up some spray. I have some buttermilk in my refrigerator, and start spraying the plants I know can get powdery mildew. I live in an arid climate, so I don't contend with it as much as plenty of people do that are in more humid environments. But I do get it from time to time. So to prevent it from ever starting, I should start right away in spraying my plants with the milk spray. And you especially want to spray when there's no pollinators busy, but it won't harm anything. Once it's dried on the plant, nothing, it doesn't bother anything. Number 4, they like moisture. Bee balm appreciates consistently moist, well-draining soil, especially when it's getting established. Unlike many drought-loving, or I would say tolerant, perennials, bee balm likes the consistent moisture much better than it likes drying out. Now, moisture is not the same as wet. So moisture is just that, just consistently, gently moist. Though your bee balm, once established, can tolerate some drought conditions. That's what I would say, is tolerate. They don't like a long period of dry. So you want to be consistent and regular with the moisture. And applying mulch can help conserve the soil moisture if you live in a very hot, or in any area really. And if you don't get consistent rains in the winter or summer, like we don't, then the mulch really helps. Bee balm has a very shallow root system, and therefore that's why it cannot handle a lot of dryness. So don't let that discourage you if you live in an arid climate. Just give it that little bit of moisture it needs during extended dry spells. Number 5, Monarda bee balm mini varieties can spread very vigorously, but that's not always a bad thing. So many varieties, they spread by underground rhizomes, and they can actually spread quite rapidly and create a big clump. For me, that's a good thing. But if it spreads just a little too aggressively for you, the plant or pieces of it are very easy to pull up. Many people do it in spring if they notice the patch is getting too big. Even like right now, this is the end of July. If it was going in an area that I didn't want, I just cut off a section where it's growing out and dig it up. I will pot it, give it to friends, or move it around the garden. There are other varieties, some of the shorter cultivars now, that are also disease resistant, but they don't spread at all. In my garden, I haven't had them spread. So depending on what you want, then there's a choice for everybody, but know that they're super easy to pull up if they start going where you don't want them to. Number 6, divide every few years. Once a clump starts getting too big, it starts to die out in the center, and then it can look a little rough. So think about dividing the clump about every 3 or 4 years. As I said, they're very shallow rooted, so that's very, very simple. And you can do it in spring. As I said, I do it at any time. As long as when you plant it back, after you divide it, keep it relatively moist, it should do just fine. But if you want to divide it in fall, after it's flowered or starting to go to seed, or early spring, then those are options as well. So let's take why divide? Keeps flowering abundant, improves the air circulation, because when a clump gets too big, it starts getting crowded and doesn't get the airflow. It will reduce disease problems, and it gives you free plants to extend in your garden or to give away. I think I'm going to put some down in the lane garden. I've got that purple rooster clump needs to be divided, so I think that would be a good place to put some. So we'll see. So basically, for most people, early spring is the best time to divide it, but not the only time. And number 6, pollinators. Love this plant. There's few perennials that attract as much wildlife as bee balm. I'm going to sit right here and hope that the hummingbird comes back. Throughout the summer, you'll likely see hummingbirds, honeybees, native bees, butterflies all come to your Monarda or bee balm. I've even seen some waspy looking things that I don't know what they are. They have an orange back. Yeah, all over them. So sometimes it attracts things that you don't even know what they are. Hummingbirds are especially attracted to them, and that's because of the long tubular flowers. They're perfect for them to nip some nectar from. And they come back to it over and over, even if you're standing pretty close to it, to sip from it all summer long. Number 8, the leaves are wonderfully aromatic and fragrant. So they are in the mint family. So that gives you a hint of what you can kind of expect as far as the scent, but it's beautiful. So many gardeners kind of describe it as a mix of mint, oregano, and citrus, which, thinking about it, that is a very fitting description. The leaves and flowers are edible, and in times past, there's been a tea made from it called Oswego tea. Probably pronouncing that wrong, but Oswego, but yeah, it has the leaves. They've made teas from it. 9, deer and rabbits typically leave it alone. We know that if deer are hungry enough, they will eat anything, but on average, they will avoid, because of the scent and the leaves are a little fuzzy, they will leave the Monarda alone. So sometimes they will sample it, rabbits and deer, and especially if it's very small. That's when you really have a problem with rabbits, if it's under a couple of feet tall. As things get taller, they seem to create less damage on plants like the Monarda. But basically, again, the scent, the aromatic leaves, and the foliage texture do discourage pest pressure like deer and rabbits. 10, do not over-fertilize. That is the number one mistake most new gardeners, even some veteran gardeners, make in their gardens. Bee balm Monarda does not like overly rich soil. What that does, if you provide it too much fertilizer, is it creates this lush green growth that is weaker. It makes it more susceptible to fungal diseases and pest pressure. That lush growth will flop easier, and you know what? They'll actually produce fewer flowers. For me, a yearly application of compost to my garden beds is more than enough to feed the majority of my perennials. And many people, if you can't get compost, a slow release organic fertilizer can help. Just apply it in the spring, and then that will help feed the early growth, but also maintain it through the season. Yes, you'll often see a lot of fertilizers promoted and used on YouTube, in blogs, etc. They're not necessary if you have healthy soil. So 11, bee balm or Monarda are so easy to propagate. We talked about dividing them. That is a great way to propagate them. There's some varieties that grow from seed. Many of the hybrids are usually you're not able to grow them from seed. Forgive my neighbors talking. So let's talk about, there's dividing. When you dig them up and divide for health, that's a great time to propagate them. There is, like I said, the seed-grown ones, and the wild bergamot is an example of that. And you can root softwood cuttings in the spring. I find division and them growing so rampantly that starting from cuttings is less desirable, only because you get a bigger plant faster when you root divide. And yeah, so, but you can do it. And I have a video from last summer about certain things, certain plants you can propagate from cuttings in the summer and early fall. I'm trying to remember. And so that's a good one to go back and review if you want to start propagating plants to keep for next year, to share, what have you. So it's just a great way to propagate perennials especially. So one thing, a bonus tip here is bee balm, they make a great cut flower. So harvest the stems early in the morning when the flowers or the blooms are about halfway open, and then you'll get the longest vase life from them. So I guess that was number 12. This is 12 things you need to know. So bee balm has earned its place in the cottage gardens for many reasons. It's colorful, it's fragrant, it's easy to grow, and the pollinators that you want to attract to your garden come in droves. So to recap, give it sunshine, give it consistent moisture, give it room to grow, good airflow, and then once you've grown it, you'll see why so many gardeners love it as a low maintenance flower for your garden. And if you live in more humid conditions, as I said, look for varieties that are more mildew resistant, and also try the milk spray trick. And you may find that bee balm will grow for you without too much problem with powdery mildew. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Come on back and we'll have more to share. But right now I'm going to go stake up that Jacob Klein red bee balm Monarda so that it can be upright instead of leaning down. All right, I'll see you in my next video.